Alright, this LeetCode question is called Is Subsequence? I'm not sure if it's pronounced subsequence or subsequence, so I apologize in advance if I go back and forth between those two. Alright, it says given a string s and a string t, check if s is a subsequence of t. You may assume that there is only lowercase English letters in both s and t. T is potentially a very long string, and s is a short string. A subsequence of a string is a new string which is formed from the original string by deleting some, but it can be none, of the characters without disturbing the relative positions of the remaining characters. So for example, ACE is a subsequence of ABCDE because ABCDE has the letters A, C, and E in it in that order. But AEC is not. So for example 1, S is ABC and T is AHBGDC, so we'll return true because AHBGDC has the letters A, B, and C in it in that order. And for example 2, we'll return false because AHBGDC does not have the letter X. Alright, so the key to solving this problem is to use two different pointers. We'll have the first pointer starting at the first character in the first string, and we'll have the second pointer starting at the first character in the second string. And what we'll do is we'll move the second pointer until it matches the pointer from the first string. And only at that point will we move up the first pointer. I'll show you what I mean. So right now, are the two pointers pointing at the same character? Yes, they are. So we can move them both up. Now we check again. Are the pointers pointing to the same character? No, they're not. So we won't move the first pointer. We'll only move the second pointer, and we'll move it until it matches the character at the first pointer. So we'll move it now. Are they pointing to the same character? No, they're not. So we move pointer 2 again. Are they pointing to the same character? Yes, they are. So at this point, we can move up both pointers. Move up pointer 1, move up pointer 2. Now are they pointing to the same character? Yes, they are. So again, we can move them both up by 1. Now, as we can see, the first pointer has moved past all the letters in the first string. Because of this, we know in this example, the first string is a subsequence of the second string. But let's look at an example where it isn't. Alright, so let's do what we did before. We'll move up both pointers if they're pointing to the same character, but if not, we'll just move up the second pointer. Alright, so are they pointing to the same character? Yes, they are. So we can move them up 1. Are they pointing to the same character? Yes, they are. So we'll move them up 1 again. At this point, the second pointer has now moved past the last character in the second string. And at the same time, the first pointer has not moved past the final character in the first string. So we know that one of our rules needs to be that if either pointer moves past the final character in its string, then at the end, we need to check whether the first pointer has also moved past the last character in the first string. In this case, it hasn't. It's at the last character. So we know that the first string isn't a subsequence of the second string. Now let's look at one final edge case. Alright, here we have two new strings. Let's do what we've been doing. We'll move up both characters if they're pointing to the same string, but we'll only move the second pointer if they don't match. Alright, so do they match now? Yes, they do. So we move up the second pointer and the first pointer. Do they match now? No, they don't. So we'll move up the second pointer. Do they match now? No, so we move it up. Do they match now? No, so we move it up. Do they match now? No, move it up. Now, no, move it up. But now we have a problem. If we keep moving it up, we just end up in an infinite loop because we'll never find a letter that matches. So what we have to do is every time we move up the second pointer, we have to check whether it has gone past the last letter of the second string. And if it has, we know we can return false because the first string wouldn't be a subsequence of the second one. So let's try that again. Do they match? No. Move it up. No. Move it up. No. Move it up. No. No. And when we get to here, we've now gone past the last letter in the second string, so now we can return false. All right, let's get to the code. What LeetCode has given us is a function called isSubsequence, which accepts two parameters, s and t. S and t are just two words, and our job is to check whether s is a subsequence of t. So the first thing we can do is we can check if s is an empty string. If it is, we'll return true immediately because an empty string is a subsequence of any other string. So we'll say if s.length is 0, then we'll just return true. All right, so if that's not the case, then we're going to need two pointers. We'll say let pointer 1 equal 0 and let pointer 2 equals 0. That would look like this. All right, so now we'll have to move the pointers, and we'll stop if either pointer goes past the last letter of the string. So we'll say while pointer 1 is less than s.length and pointer 2 is less than t.length. Okay, so what do we have to do now? We have to check whether the pointers are pointing at the same character. If they're not, we have to move up pointer 2. So we'll say while t.character at pointer 2 doesn't equal s.character at pointer 1, so while they're not the same, what do we have to do? We have to move up pointer 2. So pointer 2 plus plus. But we also have to account for the scenario where pointer 2 will never equal the character at pointer 1. So for that, we'll say if pointer 2 equals t.length, meaning if we've checked every character in pointer 2, that means that the first string is not a subsequence of the second string, so we can return false. But if that's not the case, meaning we're still in the bounds of both strings and the characters are the same, we'll just increment both pointer 1 and pointer 2. So pointer 1 plus plus and pointer 2 plus plus. In the example to the left, that is the case, so we can increment each of these by 1. All right, let's just finish up the example. Are they pointing to the same character? No, so we increment the second pointer by 1. They're still not pointing to the same character, so we'll increment it again. Right now they are pointing to the same character, so we'll move them both up by 1. Again, pointing to the same character, so we can move them both up by 1. All right, so now we've gotten to the end of at least one of the strings, so all there's left to do is to return whether pointer 1 is equal to the length of the first string. Because remember, the only way the first word could be a subsequence of the second one is if we've checked every letter in the first string. All right, so let's run the code, see how we did. Looks good, let's submit. Alright, so our code was faster than about 86% of other JavaScript submissions. As usual, the code and written explanation are linked down below. If you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. See you next time.